Hello class and welcome to today's lecture. In this lecture we're going to be discussing incentive plans and executive compensation. So let's get started. Variable pay refers to compensation that an employee gets that can change. It's variable, it's not fixed. And it can come in any number of formats. For the most part, most of us are comfortable with a fixed salary, a fixed wage. Maybe we even get paid by the hour, or it could be a salary where we get a fixed amount every month. But in a lot of jobs, there's also a variable component to the pay as well. It could be an end of year bonus, it could be commission, it could be any number of things. In fact, when we take a close look at this slide, we see a variety of types of variable pay. It could be recognition and reward programs that give out compensation or give out gifts. It could be monetary incentives, it could be profit sharing, various bonuses, trips that people get, even praise, even telling someone that they've done really well is viewed as a type of compensation or a type of reward that people get. There are four assumptions that are made as it relates to variable pay. One, some people perform better than other people, right? Two, better performing employees should receive more compensation than their counterparts. Three, some jobs contribute more to the organization's success than other jobs. And four, total compensation should be tied directly to the performance results of a person. These are four common reasons why variable pay is useful. It helps bridge the gap between a person's fixed pay and rewarding and incentivizing them to work harder for the organization and to do more. In order for an incentive plan or a variable compensation plan to be successful, you must ask yourself three questions. One, does the plan fit with the current strategy and culture of the organization? Two, are the rewards appropriate? Okay, and are we rewarding the appropriate actions? And then three, is the plan being administered correctly? If you could answer yes to all three of these, then the odds are you're going to have a successful incentive plan. Now, there's also the idea of pay for performance. So there's a huge concept within corporate America, and it certainly is a reflection of American culture, of people being paid or compensated based on merit, based on what they've earned, what they did, and they should be rewarded based off of that effort. Here are four reasons why some companies use pay for performance plans. One, it can link strategic goals directly to employee performance. So you're incentivizing employees to do things that will help directly fulfill the overall goals and objectives of the company. Two, rewards and recognizes employees for their performance. Three, promotes achievement of HR objectives. And four, it enhances the results, enhanced results and rewards employees financially. As always, and with all the programs that we've discussed so far throughout this semester, you want to measure the successfulness of your program. You want to determine, are you meeting your objectives? If so, are you exceeding them or falling short? And if you're not meeting the objectives, what can be done to bring about a correction? This slide talks to things that you can keep your eye on to measure the effectiveness or the successfulness of your variable pay programs. So you can measure things at an organizational level. You can measure success based on a program level, and you could also measure success based on an HR level. And each of the bullets in here represent components that you can use to measure and evaluate the successfulness. So you can look at, hey, did we get a change in our growth revenue and our growth? Did we get a better return on investment? What's the average productivity per employee? When it comes to sales programs, you can look at customer satisfaction, or was there an increase in market share? As it relates to HR activities, and once again, you can think back about the 7 functions of HR here, but you can look at employee satisfaction, turnover cost, turnover ratio. Are those things reducing? Absenteeism, are we having fewer people be absent for work? Are there fewer accidents that people are getting into, so we have less workers' comp claims on our insurance? Continuing on the theme of measuring your performance of variable compensation models, we could also measure the programs based on individual level, right? This is the individual employee and what he or she is doing. We can measure it as a group, so we can give rewards and benefits out variable, to a group of people, a team, a department. And we also can look at organizational level. And on this slide, we're looking at certain criteria that can be used to evaluate compensation programs, variable compensation programs, based on whether they're individual, group, or team level. I advise you to put the video on pause and take a moment to read each of these bullets so you're familiar with what pertains to what. In this slide, we're discussing the most common reasons why variable plans don't work out. One, the plan doesn't reward people for doing a good job. And you'd be surprised how many times people design compensation programs and they're actually rewarding the wrong behavior. So they don't get the results that they hope to get. The plan doesn't motivate people. One key could be that you're providing rewards that people simply don't value. Maybe you're asking people to do something quite significant and their reward is that they get a free dinner or they get a free vacation trip. And those things simply don't provide the same motivational value as other benefits or other rewards would. The plan doesn't increase base pay. It's another reason. Base pay is that fixed amount of compensation that people get every month, regardless of what the variable compensation is. The plan rewards teams and groups rather than individuals. This is going to depend highly on the culture that you're in. Obviously, if you're in a culture that's very group oriented, then you want to focus on rewarding groups. If you're in a culture that focuses on individualism, like the United States, Great Britain, Australia, Canada, then you want to focus on having individual rewards for people. Plan incentives are not seen as desirable. We kind of touched on that earlier as the example that I gave for the plan doesn't motivate people. If you're going to have a successful variable compensation model, you have to give something that people actually will want to have. As mentioned in the previous slide, there are times when an organization will want to develop a variable compensation model for a group or for a team. However, you want to be careful to understand when that's necessary and make sure that it fits within the culture of the organization. But here are 4 reasons why organizations may want to consider developing a variable compensation model for teams. 1, it improves productivity. 2, it ties pay to team performance. It can help improve customer service or production quality, and it could also increase employee retention. When designing a group incentive plan, you want to consider several key factors. 1 is the distribution of the team or group. How are they made? Where are they geographically located at? How many people are in the team? You want to consider all the demographic factors of the team and group. You also want to consider the timing of the incentives. When are you going to give the incentives to the whole group? And you want to do it at a time that maximizes the most motivation that you can generate by offering the variable compensation. And then you want to think about the decisions related to the incentives. For example, does everybody in the group get the same reward? Should some group members be rewarded more than others? Should some group members not be rewarded at all? These are very important questions to ask yourself and to make sure you think about all the possible dynamics with it, because it could lead to a host of bad outcomes if done incorrectly, as illustrated in this slide here. So rewards in equal amounts may be perceived as unfair by employees who worked harder than others. Team members may be unwilling to handle incentive decision making if they have to. For example, if you say the team nominate 2 people to receive this particular reward, the team may be reluctant to nominate individuals at all. And many employees still expect to be paid according to their individual performance. So you can see why, especially in countries that are highly individualistic, providing the same size reward to everybody could be deemed as unfair. And then if you do give differing rewards, then you could set the stage up for jealousy or infighting within the team, because one person believes that they should have gotten more recognition than they actually in fact did receive. So if you're going to implement variable compensation for groups, you want to understand the conditions that are necessary for creating success with this group model, with this incentive model, and conditions upon which make it likely to fail. So that's what this slide here focuses on. The column in the blue shows you conditions that, if they're present in an organization, group incentives will very likely work. The green column shows you conditions that, if they're present in an organization, would probably fail, would probably cause group incentive plan to actually fail. So take some time to read through this carefully and familiarize yourself with this information. Another type of variable compensation is profit sharing. Profit sharing is when an organization looks at how much profit they made for the year and they share some of that profit or a percentage of that profit with the employees. This is a very effective way of creating a variable compensation model that all the employees enjoy and that inspires them to work harder so the company will maintain a profit. There are some drawbacks to it. One is this, you have to disclose the company's financial information. You share that with people that you may not want to share that with. The profits can vary from year to year. So I've been involved with companies that had profit sharing, and on some years where things were kind of lean, the entire company went without the variable pay, the variable compensation, because the company may not have made a profit or they made very little profit and they weren't able to share any of it. So it is a drawback. However, I think that one of the positive things is that it does tie people's work performance and their desire to do well, and along with the company's desire to do well, so that they're constantly pushing forward to try to get the company to be profitable. Another type of variable compensation is a stock option. A stock option is a plan that gives employees the right to purchase a fixed number of shares. So the company says, hey, you could buy this number of shares, and they set that number. It could be 500, could be 20, could be 1,000, whatever number the company determines. But this plan gives the employees a right to buy those shares at a specified price. So let's say, for example, you get hired at AT&T. I don't know what AT&T stock is trading at, so this is only an example. But let's say you get hired on, they give you a set of stock options. They say you could buy 1,000 AT&T stock for $25. So you're like, great, what's the price of AT&T stock right now? And let's say the stock is $22. Obviously, going and purchasing the stock for $25 is not a good idea. You're paying more for the stock than it's actually worth. So what people tend to do, they tend to hold on to those options. So the company will give you a time frame. You could use these options within the 5-year window or within a 3-year window, whatever the time frame that that company specifies. And what you do is you have the opportunity to buy their AT&T stock no matter what's going on for that fixed price. So let's say AT&T then releases a wonderful new product and the market loves it. AT&T stock then shoots up. Now AT&T stock is $45 a share. Well, you still could go buy 1,000 at $25. So now if you do, you buy that 1,000 for $25 and the stock is currently trading at 45, you've made an instant profit of $20 per share right off the bat with very little risk. If the price of the share never exceeds the option that you have to buy it at, the stock option price that you have to buy it at, then the stock options are essentially worthless. And if the time period expires for you to buy within that option, the time period for your stock options expires, then, no harm, no foul. You didn't lose anything. You just weren't able to realize that benefit. But stock options are a terrific way to give incentive to employees and to tell them that they're valuable. Another way that employees can get stock is through the stock ownership program. Now, it's important to note that this is different than stock options. Stock options is the opportunity to try to give you some upside on stock price. The employee stock ownership program, it basically is an opportunity for you as an employee to buy stock in the organization. And sometimes you'll be able to buy that stock at a small discount, but you're able to buy stock. You can have it taken directly out of your paycheck, or so much of your paycheck goes to buy stock in the company. This is good because it encourages employees to think of themselves as owners of the company as well. Some of the disadvantages are that retirement benefits sometimes are tied to the successfulness of the firm, which is kind of risky when you have your entire retirement tied to only one organization. If that organization has trouble, then your retirement could suffer greatly. Now let's talk a bit about compensation. We're all familiar with the idea of getting salary only. This is where you get your paycheck every month or every 2 weeks or what have you, and that's it. There's no additional pay or compensation that you're expecting. A variation of that would be commission. So a lot of times salespeople will take a job based on commission. That could be 100% commission. It could be a partial commission. It's very common that organizations would say, we're going to give you maybe $45,000 as a base salary. So we know that's a living wage. You can pay your bills off of that. And the rest of your compensation is going to be based on commission. And the extent of your sales or your performance will determine how much you earn in commission. And they'll tell you the structure for it and everything. But generally speaking, you would say you have limitless in terms of limitless income that you can earn because of your commission. So if you are looking at taking a job at some point and it does have a commission structure, you want to ask the question, hey, is this straight commission or is this salary plus commission and bonuses? As I mentioned before, sales reps tend to get commission as part of their compensation package. So that kind of leads to a very obvious question, which is, if we get paid some form of commission, what is it that you're measuring to determine my commission amount? This slide here, we go into a number of different items that companies can use to help determine or influence what your commission amount should be, or what it should be based on. So is it the sale of new products? Is it based on customer satisfaction, account retention, increase in average sales? We could look at any of these dimensions and build a commission payment structure off of these. Now let's talk about executive compensation. We all know that in America, executives make a lot more money than the average employees in their company. What you may not know is that their compensation is actually pretty diverse. There's lots of components that come together to make up their total compensation package. So 1, you have executive salaries. 2, you have executive benefits. 3, you have perks that they get. 4, you have annual executive incentives and bonuses. And then 5, you have performance incentives for long and short term. So executives make money from a variety of different places. Let's just talk about executive perks for a moment. Executive perks could be things like an airplane, a helicopter, a mansion that the company provides to the CEO or to executives so they have a place to live and take care of their families. I mean, it could be any number of perks, and they're only limited by the creativity of the organization. Okay. I will say that most commonly, executives receive a significant amount of compensation in the form of stock from the company. And this is done because the more ownership the executive has in the organization, the idea there is that the more they're going to do to make sure the organization is successful. Because the stronger that stock price is, the more money and more compensation they have. So it's a way of trying to align the company's interests and the interests of the executive. Executive compensation considerations and concerns. When it comes to the reasonableness of executive compensation, there's a couple of questions that you should consider asking yourself. 1, would another company hire this person as an executive? 2, how does executives' compensation compare with that for executives in similar companies? Am I paying my executive significantly more or significantly less than companies that are similar to mine are paying their executives? What would an investor pay for this level of performance in an executive? And is the executive's pay consistent with the pay for other employees within the organization? So these are 4 key questions you want to ask yourself as you're beginning to structure executive compensation. And the biggest, most controversial thing in America right now when it comes to executive compensation is the fact that the average executive, the average CEO, earns about 300 times more than the average employee. And that number has only been increasing and growing wider and wider and wider. which reflects the idea that the rich are getting richer and the poor are staying the same or getting poorer. So as I mentioned, executive compensation and the sheer difference between the average employee and how much the executive is getting paid is very controversial. So you have a list of people who criticize it for any number of reasons, and here are 5 reasons right here why people criticize that pay difference for executives. They would say executive compensation doesn't reflect a company's performance. Okay, so here you are getting paid $8 million a year while the company is still doing poorly in performance. So should you really be getting paid that much? Many people, not just the CEO, contribute to the success of a company. The CEO's not doing it alone. They're providing strategic vision, and absolutely they're important as a chief leader, but it takes a whole team. So why is the CEO getting paid so much more than everybody else around him? And many people argue that, simply put, the total compensation packages are just excessive. By the time you add in the perks, the insurance benefits, the housing allowances, the traveling, the stock options, the stock that's just gifted to them, and the salary, it's just ridiculously high. So for each argument that people are presenting, there's always a counter argument. Some people say, a competitive market for executives drives the compensation practice. So we're just meeting the marketplace. The CEO is in charge and responsible for all results. So if something goes wrong, they're the ones whose head is on the chopping block, so to speak. So they should be compensated more because they're shouldering most of the risk. CEOs earn their money with endless hours, great pressure, and major decisions. They have to make these key decisions which drive the organization's success. And if the organization is increasing in profitability by, let's just say, for example, $200 million because of a decision the executive made, it's not that far-fetched to think that executive getting paid $8 million is really out of line. So there's people who argue both ways. It's up to you to make your mind up on how you feel about executive compensation and how much more significant it is than the average employee's compensation. Well, that wraps it up for today's lecture. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or thoughts, I encourage you to shoot me an email. I'd be happy to answer it.